Hello, everyone. This is Jamie with the NOIC Godcast, where we bring you a wacky word of wisdom every week from God's Word. We all mess up, and Jonah is no exception. While I highly doubt that any of us have ever ended up in the belly of a whale due to our disobedience, I can say for certain that we can learn from Jonah and apply the lessons that God was showing him in our lives. So this month we're taking a look at fantastic failures. These are the people that, despite all their flaws and human tendencies, God was still able to use them to do mighty things. Today I want to talk about Jonah.
It smells fishy.
Now, if you are in our generation, you remember the story.
That was too easy, Kevin. That was too easy.
He's like, he's done.
So soon.
I know. I love it.
So if you're from our generation, you remember the story being told by vegetables
Yes.
and, silly songs. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, the people of Nineveh were fish slappers.
Yes. There's actually a real reason, biblical reason, but we don't have time to tell you.
Oh, yes. I think it's really easy for us to, write off some of these events as great kids' stories because you hear, Noah and the Ark and, all this stuff. They're like, those are the kids' stories. But
Jonah was a prophet. Ooh, ooh. And
no,
that's the actual song. Jonah was a prophet.
I know. Tick, 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 tick.
No, I know the Jonah went on a journey.
Yeah.
No, Veggie Toast.
But we'd always make the fun joke of it, Jonah went on a gurney. I don't know why we would say that. But
He's been to church camp. Okay.
yeah, basically. Now, however, these stories are really important, though. And I think that we as adults really need to, take a look at them and, apply them to our lives. So if people don't know, if anybody's out there that hasn't heard the story of Jonah, he was a prophet from the Lord, and his job was literally just to go around wherever God told him to go and to spread the message that he would give. And everything was, normal, everyday things, and then he got a task to go somewhere that he did not want to go. He was not comfortable with going here. And Jonah's message to the people of Nineveh was, repent because you guys are so wicked, you're so evil, and, God wanted them to be saved. And if they didn't, then he would just destroy them all. But
Great children's story.
It's very good. It's very good. But Josh said it best last week, is that he was very racist.
He was, yeah.
It was literally just racism. I think that later on we'll talk about it, but he didn't want them to be saved. It wasn't just the fact that he was afraid of them. It was that he didn't want them.
I mean, his message actually, it's fun. Like you guys know me.
Destroy.
Yeah, wrath, you're horrible. It's repent. That's a fun message, but he didn't want them to respond to it. That was the problem.
It wasn't the fact that he was afraid of them. He wasn't afraid
to stop the message
slapped
before the altar call. Was the whole.
And so not only, and here's the thing, is that Jonah went through this, and it wasn't just one little mess up. He literally just disobeyed God. He didn't love the people the way that God commands us to love people, but also he just straight up disobeyed him. He went the total opposite direction from where God was calling him. And once that he, finally thought he got away from it, he was like, I pulled one over on God. Then a storm was a brewing. And, he gets on this boat, and he tries to go the opposite way of Nineveh, and all of a sudden there's a storm, and then the sailors are all like, what's going on? Why is there this storm? What's going on? And they're trying, and Jonah's probably, over there I hope they don't know it's me. Then they cast lots, and they find out that it was Jonah. But how could you imagine knowing that you disobeyed God, and then you're in this boat and this huge storm's going on, everyone's trying to figure out what happened, you're like, what me?
In the moment that they're like, what's cast lots? He's like,
how about if we didn't, we just throw this guy off? You know what I mean? He knew that it was him. There's no way that you're not to know that it was him. But even so, he was the reason that the storm was coming, and he was trying to run away from God. The sailors even tried to land the boat, though. That's the thing about the story. It wasn't just immediately, you're the bad guy, throw him over. They tried to get the boat to land, and they couldn't. And they
unsuccessfully.
were unsuccessful. And then they were like, sorry, man, you gotta go.
We tried.
We tried.
Yeah, no.
And I think it actually says in there, don't have his blood on our hands.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And they prayed to God that it wouldn't be their fault that he had to be thrown overboard. And then it came up and he got swallowed by the great fish, which, I mean, we always consider it a whale. Like,
Sure.
I don't know why we...
Why not?
It's just a big fish.
I mean, what other fish can a man stand up inside of and pray to God?
Maybe a
and
shark.
Campfire. Have you ever seen the
Yeah, the
pictures of
campfire, yeah.
Yeah, there's always...
I thought
Why
that
is
was
there campfire?
Pinocchio.
That is Pinocchio.
That is Pinocchio.
I can see Jonah being played by Pinocchio. I think that fits.
Almost the same story.
When you're a Disney mom and love the Bible.
Two stories just intertwined.
Kevin got us there.
Yeah. He's like, you know what? That's Pinocchio. Yeah. But here's the thing. He got swallowed by the great fish, and then he was in there for 3 days and 3 nights. Like, that wasn't like a small, little time. Like, that's a long time. Could you imagine 3 days? And all he knew is that he disobeyed God. And now he was in the belly of a whale. I'm sure that the only way he seen forward was death. Like, you don't get swallowed by something and then live. Like, he knew that he disobeyed God, and he got in there, and he was like, this is my end. There's no way out of this. And so he prays to God, and he's like, please just give me a second chance. And which is kind of funny because that was his whole thing of going to Nineveh, was to give them a second chance. But he didn't want to give them a second chance. But now that he was in it, he wanted the second chance.
Human nature.
Yeah, I say we are way too acquainted with that story.
And that's what this whole time, he was not afraid of the people, like we said earlier. He didn't want them to be saved. And he didn't think that these wretched people were worth saving. So I was praying and studying this out, and that was like a little bit like a small, very paraphrased version of the story. I was studying this out, and God gave me kind of 2 different ways of looking at Jonah's failure. One, that you cannot simply pull one over on God. He will find ways to redirect you back to his
Very
will.
creative ways.
Yes, very creative. Never thought a whale. You know what I mean?
He's a genius.
And 2, even if someone does not have good intentions, he can still use them for good. I'm sure that we have all lived the first point, that God will redirect our paths back to his will. However, I want to share my own testimony on that. I know that I've talked about this like in bits and pieces over the time. But I think it's really very relevant for me to bring back up again. So this begins back when, I was much younger. And when I was young, I was a very active part of the church. Like, we lived here, basically. And so...
Like you don't know.
Yeah.
It was so different
back then, But we basically lived here, from the time from 2005, 2006, when my parents started coming here. I know. And so we've been here, and we've been an active part of the church this whole time. And that was the same, continued all the way up through my teen years and into my young adult life. Well, through some really dumb decisions that I made on my own, all on my own.
Rachel giggles.
Oh, yeah, you did.
I had taken a night shift job as an STNA at the local nursing home, which in my head seems like a good idea. I was going to be making some good money. I was already a night owl anyways. I didn't like mornings. So, and I was going to miss some Sundays and Wednesdays, but that won't be so bad because I'm a strong Christian. I got this. You know what I mean?
Okay, Jonah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Here
And in the
comes
back
that
of my
whale.
mind, I knew that God did not want me to have this job.
I feel like we need the Jaws music right now.
And so I was working, and I really thought that I had convinced God that this was the right decision. I was like, I'm taking care of people.
Wait, you convinced God?
Yeah, that's how I felt. I felt like I knew that this wasn't the right decision,
Okay.
but I was doing this for the right reasons. Do you know what I mean? So I was taking care of people. I was.
That's when the wah wah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. In my head.
The fin pops up out the water.
In my head, I really thought I convinced God. I knew that this was a good decision. Because again, I was taking care of people. I was talking to so many lost people on a regular basis that this must be a good thing. No. Slowly, my desire for God started to dwindle. I no longer had a desire to go to church, read my Bible, or even pray. And this was one of the biggest storms in my life, and it was starting to brew. It was a brewing in my life. And I had willingly gotten into the boat that headed away from God, and now the waves were getting too high for me to handle. I remember thinking that I was glad when I worked on certain Saturdays and Sundays, because I didn't want to talk to my church family, because I didn't want to have to face that. Or I didn't want to be in service because I knew that simultaneously I would be completely empty but full of conviction the entire time. And to be honest, I was too prideful to admit it. There were many times I wanted to go to the altar and I wanted everybody to pray with me, but that would mean I'd have to admit that I did something wrong. I would have to come to terms that this decision was wrong. And
Finn is now circling the boat for you guys.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what's happening. And I had to admit that I wasn't in the will of God the way that I wanted everyone to believe. I was trapped between wanting to be fixed and wanting to stay where I was at. Finally, there was a breaking point. God allowed me to wallow in this for almost 2 years, and then he forced me out of the boat. I was the perfect employee. Like, I was always on time. I was always doing this. I always gave it my everything. I hardly ever called off. You asked me to do something, even if it wasn't my job to do it, I would do it. Well, in a series of weird and unforeseen events, I was no longer the perfect employee, and I was actually on the chopping block because of time off. Like, it was nothing like I did wrong to my residents or anything. It was just that I wasn't very compliant with my mandation, that type of thing.
Okay.
And so I was at the point where I was going to be called into a disciplinary meeting, and that would either ultimately end me being fired or on probationary status. So I knew at that point, when I got to that point, I knew that this was God's way of getting me out.
The whale.
The whale. He had put me in the belly of the whale, so to say, and was now giving me a way out back to him. I put in my 2 weeks notice before even the meeting had ever occurred. And even though I did not listen to him in the beginning, he never left me and proceeded to give me another chance. Obviously, now that I look back, I'm very thankful for his provision. And if he had not given me this way out, I'm not sure where I'd be. More than likely, I wouldn't be on this podcast. And honestly, I probably wouldn't even be involved in church very much. However, God seen fit to leave the 99 for me. So now for the second way that God allowed me to see this through, like, even though we don't have the right intentions, we can still be used for God. So I know that even though I was in the wrong spot, I was in the wrong place, wrong time, should not have been working that job, he still used me to shine a light to people. And I'm not saying that to, oh, well, you could just live whatever way you want and God will still use you. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, even in the moments when you think that you are not in a good spot, he can still use you, and you still have to be open to those things. I remember specifically there was a coworker that she was very lost in her, like, not lost like in just like
wandering the halls of the nursing home.
Yeah, like not lost, not just lost as in not saved type person. She was just very lost on the world.
Yeah.
Like, she was very like didn't understand anything. And so I would have so many conversations with her, and I remember those conversations with her, and I don't know where she is now, but like, she would always be like, thank you for having those conversations with me. She's like, you were the first person to tell me like that God is real, and that, you know, that I'm not, like, being a good person isn't enough. And she's like, I'm very thankful for those things. And there was several other people like throughout the time that I was there that I was able to talk to and stuff. But like, that's something that you have to understand, is that even though you're in a bad place, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's not going to use you. It's just, he wasn't able to use me I may have been able to see those people saved if I would have been in the right mindset or the right place, but I wasn't.
I think that's the whole point of this entire theme this month, is that God uses imperfect people because there are no other kind.
Yeah. Exactly.
Good point.
And again, I'm not saying go out and do whatever you want and then God will just use you. But what I am saying is that God will never waste your situation.
Absolutely.
Every single time.
God will never waste a whale.
Yes, he'll never waste a whale.
I said that. You could quote that, Jamie. You know who said it now.
I was like, my considerable quote today is, no, that was
an old dead guy.
The old, you?
Uh-huh.
Well, you are.
Old.
Actually, that's something we didn't do. It's his birthday.
We don't have time for this.
It's Josh's birthday today, so everybody say happy birthday down in the comments.
No one's going to do that.
Yes, they will. They will tune in just for
Happy
that.
birthday, Josh.
Shoot your mom.
Mommy.
We'll
But yeah.
retitle the episode Josh's
Oh,
birthday.
goodness.
Actually, the title of the episode is Directionally Challenged. You don't like it because it doesn't.
I know. I was trying to think of how I could help you, but it's okay.
It's not. Yeah, I figured as much. But yeah,
A
that's
directional dope. Okay, yours is fine.
it's fine. Anybody have anything to add to this?
A lot of good stuff there. But I have nothing to add.
It was good share, James. Good share.
Good share.
And Jonah's the perfect story for this month. Like, it really
Oh,
is.
yeah.
And I think
He-
we all have a little Jonah in us.
Yeah.
More than we want to admit.
A lot of
Well,
Jonah
and that's the
in
thing,
it.
and I didn't even bring it up here, is the fact that he went to go and he finally did what he was supposed to do, but he still did it begrudgingly.
Yeah.
And he had
He
hatred.
never does get it right.
No, he
the whole
doesn't.
story.
He doesn't.
And he literally
yeah.
gets a book with
Yeah.
his name.
Yeah.
God's like, give the guy a book.
He's
Put
got-
it in my word.
he's got
He
4
did
full
nothing
chapters.
right. He got the whole thing wrong, flubbed the whole thing. So I remember the next line of the song. You forgot I was singing. Jonah was a prophet.
Oh.
Ooh, ooh, and he really never got it. Ooh,
Oh.
sad but true. That's the song. But it went with what you were saying, so now I'm complete.
Well, that's perfect for us though, because real quick, like none of us are perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. None of us ever always get it right. Did I say that right?
Never
None of us
always get it right. Yeah.
Never always get it right. So Jonah is like should be our guy.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like we all look to Jesus. You know what I'm saying? Or other heroes of the Bible, and it's just like, no, this is the guy.
Yeah, I think it's
that we-
I think it's aim for Jesus. You're more like Jonah.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Always
Aim for
aim for
Jesus,
Jesus,
follow
but you're probably going to be more like Jonah.
It's true. It's very, very true. I do have a hard time, though, when I picture Jonah, I always see asparagus. So
Well, I'm going to see Pinocchio from now on. So
What about Pinocchio?
Asparagus
dressed
Pinocchio.
as Pinocchio.
asparagus dressed as Pinocchio?
is his nose a carrot that grows? Is that asparagus can't have carrot noses?
That
I
would be
don't know.
ridiculous.
It would just be a limb.
Yeah, that's the ridiculous part of the story.
Oh, goodness. I
So
find-
would he be roasting himself if he's having a fire? Like,
Yes.
is it a problem these vegetables are roasting?
Should we be concerned that there's a fire inside of a whale?
I mean, we
How
should be
you even
concerned
start-
anytime anyone's in a whale. Honestly,
Yeah, that whole
Yeah.
scenario.
Just the whale in
That's a
general
God
should
thing.
be-
Like I almost feel pitiful for the whale because you know what it's like to have something caught in your throat, and that's Jonah for 3 days. Yeah, it's like God, and like I could see God. Like, what if Jonah would have never like repented?
Yeah, you just-
and the whale's like, God's like, all right, swallow.
Yeah. And now. You only get this amount of time.
That's
It
right.
expires.
Well, one thing that struck me, we probably don't have time to dive into it now, but
Dive into it.
unintentional. I'm so
Oh, it's
good.
beautiful.
I know. But like he was stuck inside the well for 3 days. You know what I mean? And then Jesus rising on the third
Yeah,
day.
same thing.
Yeah.
Jesus is actually. What does Jesus say? I'm gonna flub this up. But
Yes, you
Jesus
are.
says, "Thanks, Shame."
It's the brain full of swollen socks.
Yes, it is. Jesus says, "Unless the sign of Jonah be given." And he's talking about himself.
Yeah.
And that's exactly it. He's saying that Jonah was a picture of Jesus. And yet Jonah's the biggest mess up in the
Yeah.
Old Testament. And so again, that's back to your whole point of how beautiful we can reflect Christ even though we are so imperfect.
Yep.
Yes.
All right. Is everybody
Amen.
Is everybody good? Everybody good?
Yes.
All right. So today's feature content is Take Me Back by Maverick City Music. And today's considerable quote, "You were forgiven from sin when you were saved. But you were saved to But you were
what it
saved to
says.
turn from sin." That's what I forgot the D.
Okay.
So let me start that over. You were forgiven from sin when you were saved, but you were saved to turn from sin. Part of a Christian life is the continual fight against sin, even sin that other Christians may normalize. If we find ourselves walking along the wrong road, may we remember to turn back onto the right one. How easy it can be to forget. Out calling?
Our
Calling. There we go. Our calling. This is really good. Our calling
Good
not
thing it's
to conform
anonymous.
to the world. Yeah, but to stand apart from
Someone's
it.
face would be red if they said this.
I was like, what in the world? I apparently was typing way too quickly. But yes, that's a good quote. It just butchered it, but it was fine.
Beautiful.
So this week's Charge Up Challenge, I want you to think about the things that you might be running away from God in. It could be your job, it could be friends, family, or anything. And once you figured out the ways that you're disobeying, pray to God that He will give you a second chance and get you out of the belly of the whale. So do we want to do last week's trivia question first?
I like your answer.
You put answer here.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
the answer to last week's trivia question was 48, which was D.
D.
So 48%.
38% of New Year's resolutions are about diet and exercise.
Yes.
Which is half.
Yeah, which
Wow.
that makes sense. So, yeah. And then this week's trivia question, how many personal questions did the sailors ask Jonah?
Is this in the KJV or in the
KJV.
VeggieTales version
It's
of
the
the story?
KJV.
Okay, because there's a difference.
Yes, there is, because there's a lot of talking in the VeggieTales
Yes.
one. But in the KJV, so did you give the answers last week?
Give the options,
The options,
but not
okay.
the answer.
No, not the answer, but the options.
Yes.
So A, 3, B, 5, C, 4, or D, 6.
tune in next week, find out.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Like, comment, share. Wow. Oh, I could not share.
Rachel's excited. Woo!
Yes. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Let us know how you feel about this because we want to hear from you guys. But yeah, until next week. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.
Just hope,
Do it.
Just
Make
pray
it
to
sound
Jesus.
natural.
Yeah. All right. Is everybody quiet?
We could ventriloquist. Hi, I'm Jamie.
I don't like
I don't
that.
want to see.
All right.
Minnie Mouse or something.
So can I say hello, everyone? Can I do my normal
Yeah,
thing?
absolutely.
Hello to everyone.
You may not. You may be rude.
Okay. Hello, no one. All right. Ready?